I'm going to share with you 4 raised bed ideas for growing your own vegetables. They are ideas that you can build on a budget. They're relatively quick and easy to put together, and most importantly, they are rustic and stylish, and they're going to make your garden look great. Hello and welcome back to the Little Pallet Farmhouse. I'm Carrie, and if you're new here, make sure that you subscribe because that way you'll be able to find us again when you want us. This channel is all about homesteading for self-sufficiency, how we grow food for the family, how we run a small farm, and DIY ideas for farmhouse living. Today, as I've said, we're talking about raised bed ideas on a budget. And at the end of this video, I will share with you a breakdown of costs and resources to get you going, so make sure that you stick around for that. And I'm also going to suggest other videos related to this topic that you can bookmark to watch later. So let's get going. First up is my log pile raised bed. I call it that because, well, basically it was built out of a pile of logs. We stood the logs on end in a rectangle and we secured it to a frame made from pallet wood. I did line the bed to protect the logs from rotting with being next to the dirt, and to do that I used feed bags and compost bags that I had accumulated in the garage and just stapled them around inside using a staple gun. It is my most loved bed for its beauty and functionality. It's 16 foot long, 3 foot wide, and 21 inches high, and it gives a great space for growing food. We loved it so much that we built 3 of them. I'm planting vegetables here that I don't want to have to bend down to harvest, so we have carrots, shallots, basil, celery, and a row of petunias to repel aphids. On that note, I'm into planting for a reason, and if you want to learn more about savvy companion planting, I'm filming another video on that topic. So if you're subscribed already, make sure that you click on the notification bell so that you will be notified when that video is uploaded. We also found this unused fencing panel on the property, which we repurposed as a trellis for the vining cherry tomatoes. I am so excited to see this completely covered and ready to harvest. One thing I have come to love about this raised bed is the insects, and that may sound strange, primarily when I tell you that it's frequented by a number of spiders and wasps. But after I got to thinking about it, those two alone should do a good job at keeping the flies, the caterpillars, and the beetle larvae at bay, so they will actually be helping me to do a good job of keeping my garden pest-free. My second type of raised beds are my no-till garden beds. I call these raised beds even though they are ground level because the plants are actually planted in organic matter that is layered on top of the soil, a bit like hugelkultur beds if you're familiar with that method. I have a time-lapse video called Making a No-Till Garden, which I'll link at the end of this video, and in there you can see the step-by-step process in putting these beds together. The primary advantages of these beds is that it leads to richer soil and less weeds the more you keep repeating the process, and it's healthy plants that lead to healthy soil, not the other way around. We have a heavy clay soil here that couldn't even support grass too well over the cooler months, and so this was a great option for us in order to get our bigger plants going. So here we have tomatoes, and over there a number of different melons and pole beans and cucumbers. So if you need space and height, this can be an ideal solution. What we bought to make these beds were just the T-posts and the weed barrier, and also a bag of potting soil to fill the little nests in which the transplants were planted. They are 60-foot long beds, about 2 foot wide, and so they give us a good area of growing space. Third up are my pallet beds. Before you say it, there are all kinds of ways to make beautiful raised beds from pallets, but these became raised beds as an afterthought. Let me explain. When we moved in here last autumn, I needed something immediate and essentially free to start a compost pile. And so by January, these were already getting pretty full. So since it was in my mind already to start seeds indoors with spring coming, I decided that being partly shaded by the trees in this area, it would be a great place for growing salad greens. So what I did was started transforming these composting boxes into raised beds just by closing in the gaps and then top filling the beds with soil. What has worked out really well is growing shallow rooted greens, salad, carrots and onions. And although the soil level will drop some as the hay and compost underneath rots down, the organic matter underneath is going to feed this soil without me needing to do anything, and I can always top them up again next year. One thing that you want to check with pallets though, if you're going to grow food in them, is that you look for the HT stamp before you get going. Pallets come with codes on them for shipping purposes, and HT simply means heat treated. Some pallets have been sprayed with chemicals and pesticides such as methyl bromide. However, I've also seen discussions on the internet to advise that the half-life of these chemicals is like 3 hours to 5 days, depending on conditions. So once it's been sprayed on, chances are by the time you get them, all traces of anything nasty should be long gone. But just to be on the safe side, look for the HT symbol, and then that way you can build away with peace of mind. Lastly, my landscape timber beds are low rise as well as low cost and are great for borders, edges, sides of buildings, and any place that you want to define an area but you don't want a tall bed obstructing the view. Landscape timbers are simply laid on top of each other, interlocking at the corners, and a hole is drilled through them so that a rebar stake can be driven through them at each corner and into the ground, which is essentially what holds it together. These are probably, I'd say, the most simple to put together for a low-rise, rustic-looking raised bed. So now what you've been waiting for, a breakdown of the costs and resources. And everything that I'm itemizing here is linked in the description below, plus suggestions of how to find some of the things that I've mentioned for free. So pallets are probably the easiest free resource to come by for wood at the moment, and you can get a good lot of wood out of them. I've even reused the nails that they were put together with, although you'll find the older pallets are more challenging to take apart. So start out by checking with farm supply companies. I actually went down to my local John Deere store and they had a mountain out the back which they were going to burn. So they basically said I could help myself. I would also suggest that you check with supermarkets, machinery retailers, hardware stores and garden centers. Another good place to look is construction sites. So check in with local building firms and see if you could bring a trailer down and get them that way. I have got a good stack of pallets and I haven't paid for a single one yet, so they are available with just a little bit of research. The pallet beds basically cost me the time and effort to retrieve the pallets, and then I did pay for a box of construction screws to hold them together, which cost me $10. If you want to line them out, you could use weed barrier or landscape fabric, and that would cost you about $12 for a 100-foot roll from somewhere like Farm and Home, but I actually use plastic bags as I told you. So all of that would give you a good number of pallet beds basically for nothing. If you have your free supply of pallet beds, then to make the log pile beds, it's basically just going to cost you the logs. For us, we live on the edge of a wood, so we actually needed to find a way to use up our trees. But if you don't, then a good place to start to find logs would be your local sawmill. You might even get offcuts for free. Next up, I'd try the local electricity company. They usually have a pile of old roadside poles that you can pick up at a steal. However, simply checking places like eBay and Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and just a Google search, you can find deals on truckloads of firewood. Loads of people sell it, so shop around for a good price. You want logs split into halves or quarters, not sticks. But a truckload would probably get you 2 to 3 beds depending on the size of your frame, and I've seen an average cord of wood costing around $50 to $60, so that puts the cost at around $20 to $25 per bed, and the only additional item you would need to buy is your screws or nails. As I said, I use plastic compost bags to line the insides of the frame to protect the wood from rotting, and trellising is not essentially part of the bed itself, but if you like that idea, you can find those hog panels or cattle panels for about $20 from Tractor Supply Company online. The landscape timber beds will cost you the price of the landscape timbers, and these are really cheap. You can get these everywhere. Google search Lowe's, Ace, Home Depot, Menards. On average, an 8-foot treated landscape timber is going to cost you about $3.52. My bed has got 5 posts in the frame, so $20 worth, and then the rebar stakes cost about $1 each for the 1.5-foot height. Lastly, my no-dig beds will cost you nothing if you befriend your local small farmer. If that's not an option for you, get composting and you will have yourself your own free compost within a season. And then sourcing a layer of mulch or hay can be done pretty cheaply. Again, it's all down to how big or small you want to go. The T-posts that I showed you cost $3 each and upwards depending on the height that you're going for. I use these because they're sturdy enough to support a trellis. However, you could simply use wooden stakes, which you can buy in boxes of 12 from Lowe's or Home Depot. Landscape fabric and weed barrier is optional. You can also use thickly layered newspaper. In both instances, though, it's a good idea to pin it down or edge it with stones or something so that it doesn't take off in the wind. And lastly, another great tip to make your store-bought compost go further if you're buying from the store is to mix it with builder's sand, which is way cheaper than play sand, and it's better for the soil because it doesn't retain so much water, but it's going to give your soil that great loamy texture that a lot of plants love. Okay, so I hope this has given you some inspiration to get started with a raised bed garden and to get yourself a bed put together for less than $30. Remember that if you want ideas for planting or to learn more about interplanting and growing healthy plants, to check out our other farmhouse garden videos and leave me a message in the comments below with any questions or topics that you'd like to see me do a video on. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.